So welcome, Shakespeare in early modern English. All right, we will be reading Sonnet 73 in the original pronunciation, which we try to reconstruct. Okay, but first of all, I would like to have a few preliminary remarks. How do we know? What he sounded like. Okay, after all, there are no recordings. I mean, something like language 400 years ago. There are a few points which I just would like to mention. I mean, the first is that, yes, we have, from Shakespeare's times, already scholarly complaints. I mean, conservative people, who complain that the language is going down the drain because of this thing we call the great vowel shift today, and that nobody can speak proper English anymore. And they describe what's wrong with the language, and therefore we may reconstruct from their mistakes, what people sounded like in those days. We have grammars, okay, that people, grammarians, write Welsh, Latin, French grammar and say something like, I mean, this French sound very much sounds like this English sound, okay, and so you can level it out, try to bring those two together. Yes, we do this. Of course, we have rhymes and meter. Okay, and from rhymes, particularly from things that don't rhyme anymore, we may reconstruct what they must have sounded like in order that they rhyme. Okay, here's one example from Sonnet 18, where Shakespeare rhymes temperate and date. No rhyme today. But the only chance of getting those two things together is actually temperate and dat, and this is in all likelihood his pronunciation, temperate and dat, and then it rhymes perfectly. Loan words. English words, of course, taking over into other languages, and they preserve their sound. One example, the German word frack, okay, a frog coat, all right, which derives from English frock. What the Germans heard is not an o, they heard a, frack, like American English more or less, and therefore they took this over. Yes, Shakespeare in all likelihood would have said frack, not frock. Rural accents, okay, we have those. I mean, accents, particularly in the country, are more conservative than accent in the city. I mean, of course, languages change in the metropolis, in the city, where people interact. Okay, not on the countryside, not on the countryside, never do. Okay, so Welsh, for example, is a lot closer to early modern English than modern English, than standard English is, because, I mean, the Welsh learned it somewhere around in early modern times. Yes, a Welshman would say train number 5 or something like that. This is what a Welsh bloke once said to me. And fave, that's Shakespeare. Fave, not 5, fave, for the number. Okay, here we go. Rural accent, particularly American English, because American English is in various respects early modern English. This is when the people of the Mayflower came there in early modern times, and a lot of these idiosyncrasies were preserved on the other side of the Atlantic. Okay, yes, believe me, American English is much closer to Shakespeare than British Standard English is. Okay, then we have auricular, or you may call it phonetic spelling, particularly in private letters. People, when they write private letters, they don't care about orthography, well, if you like, or they may not even know it. Particularly letters by women. Women were denied education in those days, and when they wrote the way they heard it, and so they may preserve their sounds in their auricular spelling. Very interesting case is monarchs. You wouldn't believe it, but yes, this is Henry VIII, who wrote his love letters to Anne Boleyn. He didn't know how to spell, not very much, because he dictated. Only love letters he wrote himself. And there's one example here. He writes, for example, onely or wunly for only. So Henry Reader must have said wun, wuns, wunly for one, one's only. Wun, wuns, wunly. He said that. Okay. Very interesting. And we come back to these issues. Okay, here we go. Yes, we may reconstruct it and then reversing the great vowel shift. I mean, these are the vowel sounds, okay, of early modern English, of Shakespeare. And you may, for example, I mean, the best thing is, if you like to learn it, is starting with modern English and then reconstruct. Yeah? When you have an I in modern English, in all likelihood you have an A in Shakespeare. Yeah, just reverse it. Okay, there you go. Yeah, E is E. Okay, but E may also be A, depending on whether it is spelled E-A or double E. Okay. And then you have A, and which is usually a monophthong, today. And when you have ow today, it's O in Shakespeare. When you have oo today, it's oo in Shakespeare. This already has settled through. And O in Shakespeare usually or. Okay, just go the great vowel shift back 400 years. All right, this is what you have to do. Interestingly, you look at that, there is one thing, Shakespeare still distinguishes two sounds which have coalesced today. Yeah? Today we don't make a difference between I see the sea. Yeah? So double E spelling is long E and EA spelling is long E. In Shakespeare, no, they haven't coalesced yet. So he would really say, I see the sea. Okay, I see the sea. EA spelling is still an open, an A, more or less. I see the sea. We have to bear this in mind. Very important for Shakespeare's puns, by the way, to know about these things. A lot of puns pass unnoticed these days because people don't revert to old spelling or to old pronunciation, and then, of course, may not see the homophones, correspondences, and whatever you have there. But this is a different seminar. Okay, yeah, here you go. Other differences. Okay, other differences which I may discuss in detail later on between Shakespeare and modern English. But there's one thing which concerns the but sound. Okay, the but sound. When we have a but sound today, as in come and son and done, it's usually in Shakespeare ooh. Yeah, the but sound only came into English around in the 18th century, probably. Yeah, something like that. So, as in Northern English, yeah, today, Shakespeare would say cum and sun and dun and bus and whatever have you, Buckingham, whatever you like. Okay, so an ooh instead of a but sound. So if you have a but sound today, have an ooh in Shakespeare. Always works. Always does. Shakespeare is, of course, rhotic. Yeah? Today, the rule is, of course, in standard British English, which is non-rhotic, that the R sound is left out before consonant and at the end of words. In Shakespeare, as in American English, this brings us back, okay, as in American English, it's still there. Always, yeah, in all positions of the word. Okay, so yes, he would say far. Okay, father, something like that, as in American English. Another one, short vowels. Yeah, usually more reminiscent. Some of them more reminiscent of American English. Still. Okay, you see this English mannerism, yeah, can't and shan't and castle and things like that, and aren't. Yeah? Don't do that. Just as in American English or Northern English, yeah. So after is after, okay, and castle is castle. Well, somebody from Yorkshire or something like that would speak like that. Okay, castle after something. The last thing I would like to mention is when you have the pot sound today in British English and standard RP, as in pot and coffee and so on, I got it. In American English it's long R, yeah? So it's usually pot and coffee, and strong, okay? And I shot it, yeah? I shot her, or something like this, yeah, shot. This, in all likelihood, is the same in Shakespeare. Okay, was brought over in early modern English times by the first settlers, stayed in the United States, and has been reversed in England, okay, in London. So shot became shot later on, but in Shakespeare you still have it. Okay, so these are the main differences. This is sonnet 73, okay, which I, would like to read out to you in modern English, first of all. It's a sonnet about old age, about coming to terms with time and, advancing in years. I can relate to that, so that's why I chose it. Yeah, sonnet 73. Beautiful sonnet. Okay, here we are. The time of year thou mayst in me behold, when yellow leaves are none or few to hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away, death's second self, that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire, that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the death-bed whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. This thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well, which thou must leave ere long. Something like that. Stay tuned. In the next video, we are turning to the original pronunciation. Okay.